Hello, Aubrey. How you doing today?
I'm great, Jessica. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to talk about writing task 2.
Yes, and we have a really interesting essay that we are going to brainstorm with you. So this is going to be fun today.
Yes, we got an amazing student question, and we're going to share with you some resources that you can use on our YouTube channel or just scrolling up on this podcast feed for more task 2 advice. So let's take this step by step here. Aubrey, can you read the student question?
Yes, the question is, how can I give supporting details in a task 2 essay? I love that the student is thinking about this, first of all, because I've seen far too many essays that are full of good ideas with no supporting details. So already the student recognizes the vital need to support your ideas.
Yes, and that is the question we will be focusing on today, guys. We're going to give you two strategies for coming up with supported details, and then we'll give you an example, of course, related to a current IELTS Task 2 question. But the student had two more questions as well. They asked, how can I form effective complex sentences? So, guys, scroll way up or go to our YouTube channel and search IELTS Energy 1177 three IELTS Band 9 sentence structures. So there are three grammar structures in there that are all complex that you can learn the format for those structures and practice.
Yes. And then they also asked, can you give me some tips on brainstorming? And though we are going to do a sample brainstorm for you
Mhm.
today, you can also find in episode 1277 on YouTube or scroll up 3 steps to answer impossible task 2 questions with some
Yes.
more brainstorming tips. And we were just delighted when we were looking for these resources to realize that today's episode is 1477 and both of these episodes end in 1777. So fun.
So weird. So weird.
So weird.
This is fated. This is fortuitous. This is written in the stars, today's episode. So thank you, Calpash, for sending these questions. Let's talk first of all about just two possible ways to come up with details because we know, guys, we work with a lot of IELTS students, and we know that this is one of the most difficult things to master for writing task 2, but you have to include specific supporting details in order to get a 7 or higher. You have to.
Exactly. So, our first bit of advice is to think of real people, real places, and real times. So,
Mhm.
instead of thinking of either something you could make up or something's really vague, think about people you know that have been affected by this topic or you yourself. Is it at all related to you? It's going to be easier to come up with real, strong support for an idea that you can relate to.
Exactly. And the more specific, the better, right? The more specific you are in your details, the higher your task score is going to be, because you're linking this opinion to real things in the real world. So that's the strongest type of support. So, for example, today's task 2 question we'll talk about in just a minute is about married couples choosing not to have children. So think of real people you know. Think of real places where this is common. Usually in like bigger cities, you'll see more of this, for example. Real times. Now, present day, this is a lot more common than in the past, right? So, employing these three techniques, real people, real places, real times, it does get your brain moving in a lot of useful directions for coming up with great details.
Yes. And our second tip is to think about answers to all of those question words: who, what, when, where, how. As you think about the specific support, if you kind of get stuck, like, well, what can I say about that? Ask yourself, okay, what about this is interesting? Who is it about?
Mhm.
When?
Yeah.
What of those supporting details will defend your idea to the examiner to make them see that it's valid, that it's important?
Exactly, exactly. And by the way, these two strategies for coming up with specific details and examples, this is also vital for speaking, right?
Yes, exactly. When you are asked questions on the IELTS speaking exam, you also have to give supporting details. You can't just answer in 3 words and stop, right?
Right.
You have to provide more detail, more examples, so you can, again, answer those question words. Think about real people, real places to make it easier to provide lots of interesting details.
Exactly. All right, Aubrey, can you read today's task 2 question, please?
Yes, there is an increasing trend around the world of married couples deciding not to have children. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages for couples who decide to do this. Already, right off the bat, you can see that this will be one of the trickier essays because there are these plurals. You have to have at least two
Right.
advantages and two disadvantages to satisfy that task.
Exactly. So keep the topic sentences in those 2 paragraphs. You can keep them kind of general if your 2 advantages don't have anything to do with each other, right?
Right.
So if you can't think of 2 advantages that are related, but they have to be in the same paragraph, just use a topic sentence like, firstly, let's examine the advantages to this situation. And then you could give your 2 advantages, whatever those are. But your essay will be higher scoring if the 2 advantages do have something in common. And then the main idea of the paragraph and that topic sentence will be a little bit more specific.
Yes, that makes sense, right? If they can be related so that your supporting details actually justify both ideas, right? They're providing support. It makes the entire paragraph just more cohesive.
So for example, in this case, our brainstorm, the first advantage is having more income, right? That's obvious. You're going to have more money if you don't have a lot of kids. And then the second advantage is it's easier to travel. I think those are connected.
Absolutely, because part of the reason it's easier to travel is you have that discretionary income to
Right.
spend on travel. So, though you can also talk about the ease of travel and the more flexibility in time with
Mhm.
not having, kids' schedules, it's also they're both about income. So, those supporting details will defend both of these ideas.
Yes, exactly. Or you could just say like more resources available,
Right.
right? And you
Yes.
could say that as the main idea. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about what specific details we could use for these advantages. So that first advantage, having more discretionary income, what's something specific you could say to support that?
Yeah, I immediately just would follow the strategy we told you guys to think about real people, real places, and I would use myself, right? I could say, as an illustration, as a mother of 4 children, my expenditures on groceries and extracurricular activities prohibit me from a life of luxury and fine dining.
So good. There's so much great vocabulary in there, you guys. And I want you to notice that, yeah, that is a personal example. That's the first thing that come to mind often. Um, but the way that you talk about it is high level. The vocabulary in there is amazing. The grammar structure is complex. So everything about that is formal and academic, even though it's a personal example. All right.
Right, I couldn't
So
write like, "I've got kids, so I can't
I
so
know.
so I have no money to eat out," right? If I'm saying the same thing really, but in a much more impressive, higher level way.
Totally, totally. All right. So let's look at this second advantage, easier to travel. So we've used that of the real people thing. Is there another type of support we could use to get details about it being easier to travel?
Yeah, you could talk about expense and inconvenience.
Sure.
As anyone who has children, it's more about the convenience, the flexibility of schedules. So you could provide details
Sure.
about that.
Yeah, totally. And if we try to put like a real place in there as a supporting example, we could say, like, take for example, big bustling cities like New York. I think it's much easier to travel around and enjoy everything the city has to offer if you're only 2 adults and you don't have to worry about keeping track of a toddler.
Yes, absolutely, right, and if you're sticking closer to the funds, you could mention, that you likely will have to book 2 separate hotel rooms if you have
Right.
multiple children, something like that, that makes
Yeah.
it very cost prohibitive.
Even though we are both mothers, we could totally think of a lot of advantages to also not having kids. But
Right.
um, that doesn't mean we can't think of just as many or more advantages to having kids, right?
Absolutely. But it is, oh man, it's just such a great strategy to immediately think about real people. If you don't have kids or haven't thought about this yourself, you know people who
Right,
do you know people
exactly.
who are able to travel because they don't have kids. So that's who you could write about. We
Exactly.
sort of took the route of talking about what we're not able to do because we have children, but I
Yeah.
could just as easily have talked about a couple I know who don't have children, who have this amazing like high rise downtown, who travel all the time. And that would be another interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. So, if you want a more complete system of strategies to not only tackle writing, but all parts of the exam, check out Three Keys IELTS. It's our online course available now. Go to allearsenglish.com/KEYS.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. I will see you next time.
All right, Aubrey. Thanks. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.